Welcome to FightLine, brought to you in conjunction with Buy My Fight and Westbound Logistics Services. My name is Ben Doughty, and I'm especially delighted to be joined this week by my good friend and ferocious boxing intellect, John Doyle. Glad you could make it.
Pleased to be here, Ben.
Not as pleased as I am, John. I've got to tell you, I know you've been following the show at home ordinarily. Didn't have the greatest week. I always hold my hands up when I get it right or wrong, is my motto. We spent a bit of time, quite a lot of time, previewing the Philip Bowes, Akeem Ennis-Brown scheduled British and Commonwealth title fight at the York Hall, which rather, disappointingly for both protagonists, was pulled at the 11th hour when Philip Bowes, blood found in urine, which the board pulled it at the last minute, which wasn't great. Hopefully that can be rescheduled at some point. I picked Sam Bowen to retain against the slick switch-hitting Anthony Kakache. Kakache won it on points. Yeah. And I fancied Tete to do the business versus John Real Casimiro, who, as you know now, the South African got sparked. So not the best of weeks.
No, I strongly fancy Tete to come through that and end up with a fight with Inui or Donaire, but it wasn't to be. But we'll see what happens with that.
Indeed, I think... you look at that guy, Casemiro, and Charlie Edwards. Some people, British fans, will remember he wrecked Charlie Edwards' initial world title dream on the Brooke Golovkin undercard back in 2016. And Charlie says the man is a sickening puncher, on another level of pain and discomfort. And I believe he's a three-weight world champion now, which, although it's a devalued accolade in this era, it's rather jettisoned him in the kind of pantheon of Filipino greats, to be fair to him.
Yeah, but at those lower weights, I think a lot of these guys who have won multiple world titles are the real deal, and he certainly is one to watch, and he's in the pound for pound list as one of the best punchers in the world, I would say. We
wish him well, and we can only hope that we fare better in the Nostradamus type stakes this week.
He couldn't fare any worse.
Indeed, the only way is up, as Yaz and the plastic population once proclaimed. Now listen, we have a huge fight that we're going to focus exclusively on this week. The rematch that the world holds its breath for, Anthony Joshua's date with Destiny in Saudi Arabia versus Andy Ruiz. I do know, I've said on Facebook and on the social channels recently that some of my friends, whose opinion I really rate on the Sweet Science, have gone rather big on Andy Ruiz. I know that you were very impressed with his performance back in the summer, and I get the feeling that your position has been rather fixed, that you expect him to do the double?
I do, but I would qualify it insofar as I've never known a rematch of a big fight to have so many unanswered questions going into it. Ruiz looks far too relaxed for me going into this fight.
Did he not look that way before? Almost acting like the fan. This is my big moment. Can I get a picture of the belts, please, sir? Is it the same spin?
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't watch a lot of the build-up because I expected him to lose.
Yeah, it wasn't very captivating or interesting, was it? And he was a late substitute, a 5-week notice substitute for the disgraced, albeit semi-vindicated, Jarrell Miller. When I say semi-vindicated, I mean it's all brushed under the carpet and forgotten about. He can come back for big fights.
That's one way to be vindicated, isn't
it? It's a loose use of the term. But, he was very unassuming and the kind of, Mexican-American boy next door. So is that a deviation from his previous persona? Is that just who Andy Ruiz is? Or do you think there's a kidology or what?
I think he's just one of the world's nice guys, very relaxed and laid back. He believes in his own ability. I think it's a bit of a 50-50 fight, really, this one.
We will obviously look at the odds, as is our remit, in a little while. The thing that surprises me or is noteworthy about this situation is that the preponderance of boxing people, in terms of fight fans online and boxing observers that I speak to and I see quoted in the media, seem to very much favour Ruiz to do very much what he did last time, but the bookies have still made Joshua a bet in favour. I don't think I can quite recall seeing such a disparity between informed public opinion and what the money men are saying. Here's my problem, John, and you are right about the intangibles. From a boxing perspective, I don't see why Ruiz can't do the same as he did last time, because it wasn't like he got lucky with one shot. Yes, he was on the deck and the fight turned on the spin of a coin in that dramatic third round, but he basically proved himself to be the better, technically better, more seasoned pro at this stage of the game. And it's a big question of how many, regardless of his mentality and his desire and renewed hunger, it really is a question of how much technical adjustments Anthony Joshua can make in that kind of incubation period of 6 months, surely.
Well, exactly, Ben. And I think that the majority of technical adjustments that Joshua can make at this stage of his career are to exercise more caution. Don't go straight to Ruiz, move around. There's not a great deal he can do to match Ruiz in his speed. He can't do anything about that. He can't do anything about his combination punching is nowhere near as good as Ruiz.
He can put shots together, but he seems a little by numbers and robotic. There's a little bit of footage I would like to look at, not just yet, but we will look at it in a second, which proves that point to some degree in slow motion. We're at the mercy of whether the Zone or Sky decide to block our video. We do have a contingency plan, because you've got to have a plan B, and that's what I would very much recommend to Watford's finest on this occasion as well. But the thing is, Ruiz is a good counterpuncher, is a fact. Like I say, people have made much of the fact he's got fast hands. Obviously, he's given a massive boost to slightly overweight men and even more clinically obese men the world over. I'm sure that gym memberships took a right bashing immediately after June the 6th this year. And, you got all those memes about, the fat guy walking with the hot babe on the beach saying, "Andy, you don't know what you've done for us, much love." And, people were the old maxim that muscles don't win fights, but he is deceptively fit for purpose, and he is a quick guy, and he's just a well-rounded technical fighter. I think when you look at the first fight, they call it aggressive counterpunching, when you come forward and you walk a guy down, but you wait for him to lead. Yeah. And this is where I think one of the adjustments I think Joshua is going to need to make. I think he's going to need to counter the counterpuncher a little bit. I don't know that he's got to run from him and what people erroneously call box on the back foot and keep it long. Because correct me if I'm wrong, he was trying to do that last time in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, he was. I think Joshua's got to keep it at no closer than mid-range.
Yeah.
He's got to lure Ruiz in with feints himself.
And counter.
You
agree he doesn't have to run from him? And
he doesn't have to run.
Because you give him too much momentum?
Yeah, because Ruiz on the front foot can open him up.
So you've got to keep him a little bit honest with your jab and with your feints.
A good, solid, well-timed jab and the right hand as well. Mm-hmm. But at mid-range, he doesn't want to get too close, because what I've noticed, and certainly doesn't want to get into clinches, because what I've noticed with Ruiz, he throws punches from the floor, and Joshua's an upright target, and he doesn't see them coming.
This was the problem, and it's very interesting.
And he doesn't throw just one punch. He'll throw 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s, and he'll throw on the way out.
What Americans call punches in bunches.
Yeah.
It's very interesting you say he doesn't want to be in a clinch, because so many people have said he needs to employ a kind of Klitschko-esque jab and grab strategy to win ugly and be safe with this one and to be victorious. They say he's got to lock him up. I understand that, but I think you make a great point that people who can punch out of a clinch work downstairs. Yeah. We talk about downstairs, by the way. Key points for Anthony Joshua for me, the keys to victory, as it were. I think he needs to get that left hand up, because it was draped like here last time, and he was backing off and giving Ruiz a lot of momentum, who would come forward with both hands up, good head movement, bilateral movement, and was blocking the jab with his right hand. Okay. Yeah. Now, with Joshua, what about going downstairs and targeting the body a bit more, a bit less head hunting early on? Surely it'd pay dividends.
Yes, it would do, perhaps, but I think he's got to do that with the jab, go downstairs with the jab, and bring and open up shots upstairs.
And did not Robert McCracken say that when you jab him up and down, you'll be okay. He can't operate when you jab him up and down, because he took a lot of stick, Rob McCracken, like you do when like the football manager when the team loses after a great run, or any scenario in boxing. I think it's a credit to Anthony Joshua. He didn't hop to another trainer and play the blame game and shift the responsibility. But Rob McCracken was actually, I think, giving him some pretty sound advice that Anthony, for whatever reason, could not seem to execute on the night. It was strange, because he's a kid who we've seen function under tremendous pressure right from his Olympic days, and most memorably in Klitschko at Wembley that night. But something wasn't right with him upstairs that night. We don't know what it was, but is it fair to say that he wasn't firing on all cylinders emotionally?
It's certainly fair to say. he looked to me to be a fighter with no confidence at all, and worrying about the inevitable ceiling falling in on top of him.
Why was that? People have made much of the strange behaviour in the corner, the strange questions, novice-esque questions he asked, at one point even resorting to asking the coach, why do I feel like this?
I've never seen a fighter at this level, at world level, or at decent professional level, ever behave like he behaved in the first fight with Ruiz.
Yeah.
And that is a worry going into this rematch. If Joshua boxes to orders, he keeps it at mid-range and is very disciplined, he's got a chance. But that's a physical aspect of the fight.
Yeah.
What we don't know about is how these two are going into this fight
because
mentally.
There's always the possibility that Andy Ruiz could suffer from a little bit of Buster Douglas syndrome. Your life has changed. You've got the fame. You've already got numbers in your bank account that you never would have previously. I'm not going to say wouldn't have dreamed of them, because I'm sure every fighter dreams of it. But now that dream has become a reality. There's been a lot of publicity in the last few months of him hanging out at parties, mansion houses, Rolls Royces, expensive accoutrements, Rolexes and such. I do wonder, I don't necessarily say it will happen, but I've entertained a possibility that Andy Ruiz will not look like the same fighter who, in some people's estimation, has been parlayed into the second coming of Mike Tyson and Joe Frazier rolled into one, off the back of one really great performance back in summer. You know, will Andy Ruiz, will he have been softened by this meteoric overnight success?
I don't think he'll be hardened by it.
Okay.
That's for sure. Two things worry me about Ruiz going into this fight. One, he had to be forced into it. Two, from the interviews I've seen in Saudi Arabia with him, he looks like he's on holiday.
Yeah.
He's giving everybody time. Everybody who wants to interview him interviews him, whereas Joshua's shut away, concentrating. He looks like he means business.
I'm reminded, from a boxing perspective, I think Andy Ruiz should win again. And I think there's a likelihood he can win inside the distance. Perhaps not as early as last time, but inside the distance nonetheless. And I also think there's a rather slim chance of him winning on points because of all the corruption and favouritism we see in boxing as the absolute default standard norm. But I'm reminded of what Emmanuel Stewart said ahead of the Oscar de la Hoya Ike Quartet welterweight unification in 1999, when he said, from a boxing perspective, Ike Quartet beats Oscar de la Hoya, but Oscar seemed to have this thing protecting him, you know. And Gary Jacobs wasn't having a bar of it. He goes, oh, he's saying he's protected and all that crap, you know, because he's a hard-bitten Scottish fella who wasn't going to have any of that kind of mysticism, you know. But I do believe that certain people, that's what he said. Oscar de la Hoya was a child of destiny. He said Muhammad Ali was one once, and you don't want to fuck with them. We can swear on this show liberally if you want to, by the way. Little directive. Yeah, and I do wonder, Spencer Fearon, often my co-anchor on this show, says that Anthony Joshua actually means born special. Do you think there might be any of this, do you entertain any of this more higher-minded notion that it's in the stars, as opposed to the nuts and bolts of jabbing, hooking, stamina, counter-punching?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
It didn't help him last time.
No, but perhaps I'm not going to do this one to death. But perhaps it was written in the stars for him to fall and rise again. But you're not getting. I didn't expect. I'll be disappointed if you were buying into any of that, to be honest with you. Okay, listen, John. I want to show you some footage if I can. I want to look at the first knockdown, or the only knockdown of Andy Ruiz on the night in the third round, and look how it happened. This is the dramatic point in the fight when it turned. Now here's the thing, and I'm hoping that they're not going to put the block on us at Sky DAZN here. There's a big right hand, measure right hand, then he throws left hook, touches him with it, right uppercut, left hook, and Ruiz goes down. It's what happens next that really tells the tale of the fight. There's Ruiz, he absorbs that monstrous right hand, touch right hand. Then he tries the same combination again, Joshua. Ruiz lays back, rolls underneath it. Let's see, the same combination again. He rolls underneath it, catches him high on top of the head. This is where it all goes pear-shaped for Joshua initially, when his equilibrium is gone. And
they're in close and he's upright.
Okay, exactly. Keep talking.
This is the dangerous ground for Joshua. He shouldn't be that. He shouldn't try and close the distance that quickly. If he lands a good jab or a double jab, and he wants to throw the right hand, if it's there, throw it. but get back out and get off.
And don't get
to
into
one
any
side
kind
or
of
the other.
exchange or dogfight
No,
with him. Don't let
no.
him. Remember when Dave Jacobs said to Sugar Ray Leonard, "Don't let him draw into a punching match." Is this very resonant for Anthony Joshua?
Very similar, because he's a big, tall target, and Ruiz can throw them from anywhere. Big arcing shots that you don't see until they come up to near your chin.
Yeah.
That's what he's got to do. He's got to keep it at mid-range and box in a disciplined fashion.
Next thing, it's remarkable how many British fans, I know that hardcore boxing fans like yourself and me don't let patriotism or flag allegiance impact upon our fistic affections, but it is, we do live in a patriotic kind of environment for the most part in sports and otherwise, and it is rather remarkable how many people have turned on Anthony Joshua now. They seem to be almost putting Mexican flags, in the window and saying he's glass-jawed and he's a quitter. I want to ask you about this quitting thing. I'm going to look at the ending right now of the fight back on June 6th, and certain people, Teddy Atlas included, and a whole host of other boxing personalities, and nobody's online, have said that he effectively quit. Let's look at this piece. Now, okay, this is the end. You see Joshua looking like he wants to put some shots together. He's measuring constantly with that, with the lead hand, and then trying to throw the big right hand. Relatively innocuous shots he goes down from for the final knockdown, John.
They were, but if you look just previous to that, he threw a double jab, then he threw a right hand.
Yep.
It was he landed the double jab. It was a half-hearted right hand.
Can we look at what happens here? I'm not cutting you off, but the body language, it looks like a man who doesn't want to fight again anymore at this point. Is it fair to say?
I think he was confused. He didn't fancy the job.
And then now you get the obligatory
the faux protest.
Yeah.
I don't think he fancied the job. I don't think he fancied the job from the day the replacement opponent was announced. It made him very uncomfortable.
Yeah, because if you've been when you are rather robotic, because somebody said to me, my mate Mark Carolan said, "Can you imagine?" Anthony Joshua was saying his mantra for this fight is stable base, breathe, head movement. He was saying certain things, positive affirmations to make sure he performs on the night a lot better than he did 6 months ago. And my friend Mark said, "Can you imagine Billy Joe Saunders or Tyson Fury saying stable base, breathe, dip left, dip right, double the jab?" They don't need to. The naturals was his implication.
It seems like he's trying to convince himself. He'll be a lot better prepared. He should be a lot better prepared mentally this time. But there are ghosts from the last fight that could rear their head again.
And they're either going to be exercised or they're going to come home to roost in a way. Before we look at the odds, I'd just like to say some people are speculating that he's effectively finished at any elite level if he does incur back-to-back losses to this rank outsider who was never even supposed to be at the races with him. I don't necessarily, what I will say, whether he's finished or not, I think the big plan and any talk of greatness might be dead in the water. I really do.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was always going to be difficult for him to become an all-time great because he had a limited amateur career. He's made the best of the tools he has, and he's achieved a phenomenal amount of success with those tools. But he is limited at the very top level.
In terms of technical gifts and all the rest of it, we see there was a bunch of heavyweights in the 80s, including our good friend Tim, who will hopefully join us in a bit, who would have probably made pretty short work of perhaps a pair of them. Let's see what the odds makers are saying about this one. As I said already, John, Andy Ruiz is still a great price at 2-1. He's hard. The secret's out. The cat is out the bag, and they're still offering you 2-1 on the Mexican-American doing the double. To win by KO, TKO, which once again is an attractive price because I think for the reasons we've discussed about judges and points decisions, particularly with the recent track record of certain promotional firms, shall we say, not looking to dig Eddie Hearn out. You can if you like him. I've got to see him sometimes.
We'll give Eddie a day off, I think.
Okay, yeah. 5-2. So if I'm backing Ruiz and I haven't said who I'm backing yet, then I'd probably go for the KO win. To win by decision, he's 16-1, which really reflects, I think, what I was talking about.
Yeah.
The draw is quite short at 25-1. I often make a point that draws used to be like a default setting of 66-1. I think in the more kind of culture of crazy scorecards, that scenario has got a lot narrower. Joshua is 4-9 for the straight win, John. You've got 10-11 for him to get an early shower. And you've got 7-2 for Joshua on points. Now, I'm going to throw some wildcard scenarios to you. There's when the fight of this magnitude, which has the whole world holding its breath in anticipation, the bookies will get quite creative and they'll throw you some scenarios, looking at ways to part a fool with his money. Might need the glasses for this one. You know, I may look physically perfect, but I do have the odd defect at 49 and 3/4. Now listen, Ruiz Jr. to be knocked down in rounds 1 to 4. But to win by KO in round 7 to 10 is 80 to 1. I mean, it's not a bad scenario, but you could put a fiver on it.
Well, it's what happened before, isn't it?
Pretty much. Yep, it's exactly what happened before.
80 to 1.
It is what happened before.
They say lightning doesn't strike twice. But
both, talking of what happened before, both to be knocked down in round 3 again is 66 to 1. Both fighters to be knocked down at some point in the first 3 rounds. I like the look of that one at 40 to 1, John. I'm not saying Ruiz or Joshua will definitely get decked, but it's not. You could have some fun with your little hedge bets in this area, couldn't you?
Yeah.
5 knockdowns plus in the fight, like last time. Obviously, it's taken its blueprint from last time to a great extent. It's 20 to 1. Ruiz Jr. to land 17 plus punches in round 7. That's the most bizarre price on anything I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, it is to me, and you could end up in a dispute with a bookmaker over that, I would have thought.
Can you imagine? You say, no, that wasn't a punch, that was just
was a
feint. Yeah, that was
one was a Calzaghe.
Do you know what? We should actually get on this just so we can have a row with the fella behind the counter at William Hill on Monday. Yeah. Okay. Both fighters to be knocked down and Ruiz Jr. to win. That is a good bet at 14 to 1. It's really not a bad bet. Ruiz Jr. to be knocked down in round 3 is 12 to 1. Joshua and Ruiz Jr. to land 12 plus punches each in round 3. That's more arguments for the bookies, isn't it?
Yeah, that's too technical for me.
Have you ever known bets on that before? I've never seen it.
No.
Okay. Joshua to be knocked down 3 plus times is 8 to 1.
Well, they're very short odds. That's very short odds, I think.
Yep. Ruiz Jr. to be knocked down and win by TKO. That's a lovely bet at 8 to 1. Because obviously, Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz both know that Joshua has got the power to put him in trouble, because he was in trouble last time. It was a heavy knockdown, but it was that moment of destiny, and perhaps when his whole life crystallised, when he got up, and it was much was made, and rightly so, of the monstrous right hand he absorbed when he got up.
That was gargantuan.
It was. It looked harder than the uppercut left hook that had put him there in the first place.
He basically walked through it. He didn't even go down on his haunches.
Yeah. Let's talk about something else. The weight in both cases. The bookmakers have compiled a list of scenarios that you might wish to take a flutter on regarding what the fighters will tip the scales at. Now, okay, let's deal with Ruiz first. To weigh in under 220 is 100 to 1. That's not going to happen, is it?
No. Well, unless he gets dysentery in the next 48 hours.
Okay, well, see, there's another area of betting. You know, if you've got any inside information of that nature,
well,
then
I don't
please,
know what the water's like over there, but he should be all right.
Imagine. Ruiz to be between 220 and 230 is 50 to 1.
We may as well make it 5,000 to 1.
Okay, 230 to 240 is 25 to 1. Ruiz between 240 and 249 is 12 to 1. Can you remember what he was last time?
He was 267.
267. Okay, Ruiz to weigh between 250 and 259 or 260 essentially is 10 to 11. So I think that one is probably more or less what you're looking at. They say he's shed a bit of weight, but I don't think he's getting Weight Watcher of the Year on this occasion. And some of those photos that were circulating were disingenuous, you know.
I'd steer away from these if I was putting money on the fight.
No, yeah.
Because what does Ruiz chain weigh?
Do you know what? There's another. You talk about arguments with the bookies about 17.
That probably weighs half a stone.
Because they don't have to weigh in next to naked like most of the fights in the lower weight divisions do for obvious reasons. Can you imagine? You talk about arguing with the bookies over whether somebody landed 17 or 18 and a half punches in a round. Can you imagine saying, well, no, but I think that he weighed in his trainers. I was factoring in for them. You know what I mean? So quickly with Joshua, I'm not going to go exhaustively through the every scenario. I think it's a little needless and a little peripheral. But I would expect Joshua will look very skinny in a picture, admittedly with a tee shot on the other day, with his hands raised aloft in victory pose. It was taken by Simon Goodall, Mike Goodall's son, sent to me via Robin Ray. I'm trying to show off here that you know I've got links. You once said to me, you seem to talk as if you're involved in this exclusive club. I've been waiting for this moment to say, yes, damn right, and don't you forget it. So, yeah, he looked very skinny in the picture, right? And I would expect Joshua, who came in at 245 or thereabouts last time, I would expect him to come in closer to 235 this time, which this would be that scenario at 11 to 10. Clearly the money men fancy it as well.
Yeah, 238. He might drop in at about 240. I don't expect him to have lost any more than half a stone. That would be far too drastic.
Okay.
I don't think that would be good for him. It's how he feels. And if he's fit and ready and he's not done too much weights, he needs a bit of mobility. And the way I think he needs to fight to win this, he needs to be a bit lighter and not as tense. I think that's favourite, 230 to 240, roughly.
That's what I'm saying.
238 would be my guess, but we'll see. We
shall indeed. All right, let's cut to the chase. If the fight doesn't go the distance, and I think it could certainly be, it's a very likely scenario that it might not do. If we look first of all at the wider round group betting situation, Andy Ruiz to win in round 7 to 12 like last time is 6 to 1. I do like the look of that price. Andy Ruiz in the first 6 rounds is 5 to 1, so it's a little shorter. Joshua in the first 6 rounds is 9 to 4, and in the latter half of the fight he's 3 to 1. Interestingly, John, let's look. Let's micromanage those odds a little bit. Let's look at the. We'll cut the fight into quarters if we can. They probably expect us to talk about this for a little bit before it changes, but I actually want it to change now. Thank you. So, okay, Ruiz, a bit of a confusing way of doing it. I'm going to do it my way. Ruiz in the first 3 rounds is 16 to 1. In the second 3 rounds, he is 8 to 1. In rounds 7, 8 or 9, he is 8 to 1 again. In the championship rounds, as it were, 10, 11 and 12, he is 16 to 1. Don't mind a look at that price, I'll be honest with you. Okay, Joshua in the first 3, 6 to 1. In the next 3 standards, he's 9 to 2. Round 7, 8 or 9, he's 6 to 1. And the late stoppage, 10 to 12, he is 8 to 1. If I gave you 100 quid to lump, you haven't told me who you're betting on yet. This is the point at which you're going to reveal that. And if you are picking the early shower, tell me where you're going with that.
I'm not picking Joshua for a stoppage win. I think he'll box in a very disciplined fashion, stick to his jab, the occasional right hand. If he keeps it he'll fight very similar to the way he fought Joseph Parker.
Yeah.
And if he sticks to that and manages to avoid too many close range exchanges with Ruiz, he could win a decision. So if Joshua is to win, I'd go for him by decision. Okay. I can't see him stopping Ruiz. He's got a granite jaw, and I don't think he'll land enough clean punches to be able to stop him. But you're betting Ruiz? I'm betting Ruiz. Push comes to shove? If I had to, I think it's Ruiz is a slight favourite to me. Joshua could win, but I think Ruiz's variety, speed is going to be a big problem for Joshua. Ruiz's hand speed, and I think they will get into exchanges. Joshua will get into range, and I think Ruiz will stop him again. I've agonised over it. I'm picking Andy Ruiz by KO in the second half of the fight. I'm playing relatively safe on that. I'm going Andy Ruiz around 7 to 12, which I believe was either 6 or 8 to 1. I don't know if you can recall it. I should have committed it to memory, ideally. But that's my tip. I'm going Andy Ruiz by KO around 7 to 12. These prices are with Sky Bet, by the way. We shuffle it about a bit. I have to say, I've got the Sky Bet app on my phone, so that's the easiest one for me to screenshot. If anybody at Sky Bet is watching this, then please jump on board. We can increase your custom tenfold, I promise you. It will be the most lucrative investment you've ever made, so get in touch with me. You know where to find me. John, on the subject of betting, which is our essential remit on this show, in conjunction with the more important part of boxing. If you were going to recommend, for those who like a treble, if you were going to recommend an accumulator this week, what would it be? Well, first bet would be, I think Ruiz will perhaps lose the first 2 or 3 rounds against Joshua. Yeah. But then he'll come through and win in rounds 4 to 6 at 8 to 1. 4 to 6, 8 to 1 is yours? Slightly earlier than you. I think he'll get to him. And Joshua might unravel. Remember, he said that John Doyle is going Ruiz in rounds 4 to 6. Yeah. And I would back Dillian White's a banker, against Whack. I think
Yeah,
the guy's
Marius Whack.
inappropriately named.
Yeah, well,
because he doesn't whack that much.
No.
And
Might be Vark.
Vark even, and I think White might make a bit of hard work out of it. He's been under pressure with this testing drama that's been going on. I think he might be a bit stressed and under par, but I expect White to get through in about 9 rounds there. And finally, and might be the best clash of the night, surprisingly, Povetkin to beat Hunter after losing about 5 of the first 8 rounds.
There's a bit of value there, and funnily enough, I fancy that as well. I think Povetkin is what you call a very live underdog.
Yeah.
He's not a spring chicken, but I think he is a very useful guy who did trouble Anthony Joshua moderately when they fought back in, I believe it was last year, but it wasn't 2017. I'm pretty sure it was 2018. Well, John, I massively appreciate you coming in and giving your Delphic predictions on FightLine for episode 8. Where will you be watching the fight on Saturday night?
I'll be watching the fight at home.
Is that a bit of a bonus, the fact it's happening in Saudi Arabia? It means we get to see it at a civilised hour. I almost feel like we're American for the night. You know, we get to... The ring walk has been billed as happening at 20:45 sharp. Undercard already dealt with. Anthony Joshua in the ring and ready to commence battle by 9 o'clock, surely?
Yeah, that's very good for me. I'm not one to wake up in the middle of the night now to watch big fights. I prefer this timing, and I think even my 6-year-old son will watch it too.
I think I can safely say that I have not looked forward to a heavyweight championship fight, or indeed any fight, for a very long time. It's a fascinating prospect. I don't have any huge allegiance either way. I like Anthony Joshua. He's a nice guy. Andy Ruiz seems like a nice guy too. I honestly can say on the night, may the best man win. Thanks for your time. Thank you for watching. And in the meantime, be lucky and keep punching.